You
This
wanna?
conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and good evening, some people. Um, all right. I guess today would be a good day. I'm sorry, last week I had to leave early, and I realized I did not pass the ball for presenting to anyone. I think we had some stuff we wanted to present. Then I'm not sure if we actually went around and did the screenshot thing.
I'm not sure what the screenshot thing was.
I think we were trying to present on sorry, it was
Yeah.
actually Yenlin and Kevin
Okay.
Dutamo.
Yeah, I think we're just going to present today. I think Kevin and Wanlin have something put together to kind of show parameter passing. And then there was another question as well that came up last week that's escaping my mind, but I remember it was parameter passing and something else. Yeah. Also, Paul, real
Vincent, you
quick,
were
what
about to
was
say something?
the logistics item? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to say, I don't know if you've seen sort of the final presentation rundown for November, but it looks like the keynotes were shortened to 15 minutes, down from, I think it was 30 or 45. So we may need to scale back some of the presentation to fit in that amount of time.
Yeah. Since Archana, you're here, you want to comment on that?
Sorry, hi.
Hey,
Hi guys. Yeah, so I think we met collectively as an initiative, and I left it up to the volunteer leaders for the 2021 strategic initiative to decide, Paul. Um, and I think between all of the folks that were on the call, I think it was decided that test and validation would have, I think it was 2 hours. Is it, if I remember correctly?
I believe it was an hour, but yeah.
Okay, it was an hour, so that's what the team collectively decided. Now, I think it was just because of the overwhelming amount of abstracts that we received for sustainability versus the abstracts that we received for test and validation. So that's pretty much, I think, how the team allocated the time.
Yeah, to be
I
clear,
think what Dan was saying here is, go ahead,
sorry,
Dan.
go.
No, it's fine. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, to be clear, I think that's okay. It's going to change a little bit what we were planning to present, but I think we can just scope it back a little bit and then tightly align it to the work that we're already doing here and focus on that portion and make it more of a call to action than sort of, the great next great American novel and testing, I guess, right? And then we can make a longer presentation or maybe focus some of that energy on some of the written documentation, I think, which would probably be more durable anyway.
And then that's fine. I think that if we wanted to kind of do, if you will, an hour-long teaser at the summit, and then if there's enough momentum, we could certainly set up ongoing webinars. We could set up a virtual, workshop um, following the summit. Because, November 9th and 10th is when the global summit is, but then we're also targeting another summit in Prague. Um, knock on wood, everything stays as, positive as far as travel is concerned. And that will be in April, but there's still January, February, March that we could do virtual events or, webinars or something like that. So something to think about as we start looking beyond the summit. And I'm also going to post the schedule here for those of you that are interested on exactly what the schedule is for the summit in the chat, so you can take a look. If you're on your computers, there you can select which tracks, and so you can go through and select, engineering workshop 2021 initiatives. And then if you're on a mobile app, unfortunately, they're still working on the mobile app, and all of the track selections are at the bottom of the page. So scroll down.
Yeah. Are the presentations going to be like web broadcast live, or will they be sort of post produced and then put online later? Because I'm thinking with the COVID numbers right now, like the in person attendance for the event may be a lot lower than we expect.
Yeah, so there will be a virtual element. So if you go to the Global Summit page and you, let me see if I can share my screen. Is there a way for me to share my screen and I can show you guys? It might be easier because pictures are worth 1,000 words. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can share
Yeah,
my
that would be great,
screen.
Paul, if we could give her
Okay.
the baton.
Yeah.
Just did. Yeah.
Okay, so take a look. This is the strategic initiatives, and like I was saying, there's a menu on the right-hand side, and you can select by tracks. And for me, it's up here in hot pink, which I've selected. Sorry, share. That's weird. I just got the screen share, even though I was already sharing my screen. Now it's locked me out. That is so weird. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we can see your screen just fine, Arna.
Oh, that is so weird. It is not letting me get out of this mode. All right, hold on one second. Let me try this again. To share an application, launch the application and choose share. Okay, launching the application, choose share. Here we go again. All right, so I clicked on strategic initiative. Oh my God, this is so weird. I think, Michael, if you're on the call, I'm having some sort of a weird glitch with GoToMeeting. It will not let me share. It will not at least let me move around. Okay, give me 1 second, folks. Move this here. All right, can you see my screen or not? I can't tell.
At the
No,
moment,
no.
Okay, let me try this one more time.
yeah, if you get stuck, you might be able to send us over the link and one of us can present. You can kind of talk us through where you want us to go.
Yeah, the link is the link that I posted in the chat, but hold on 1 second, let me see. It will not let
Here,
me
I
get
can
out of here.
share, I think.
Okay. Okay, let me see. So if you go under the registration tab, so at the very top it says schedule, right? But if you go on the registration tab, you'll see that there's 3 elements there for registration. There is the in-person registration element, there is the virtual all access element, and then there's the virtual limited element. So those that are, assume that you're doing the virtual all access because you have access to the engineering workshops, which is the 4th, what do you call it, line item down. You will be able to live stream what is going on in the classroom or in the actual room, but you will not be able to talk. So the only way to communicate with somebody on the platform is through chat, through live chat. So if you have questions or whatever, you can easily, chat with other attendees. You could chat with the speakers in the virtual platform, but you will not be able to, quote unquote, call in like a Zoom meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. That's what I think we were primarily expecting, is just folks would
Yeah.
be passive viewers.
Yeah, and if you're attending in person, there will be a lot of on-demand content that will be available, but we just didn't want a bunch of people sitting in a room watching a video screen when they can do that from the comfort of their own home, right? So we'll give preference to those people that are actually present and, are able to do the live presentations. If for whatever reason your abstract has been accepted in the schedule and you are unable to travel because of corporate policy or just a personal choice, that's fine. Just let us know so that we can actually take a pre-recorded version of your talk and actually put it up on our virtual platform.
Okay, and then one last question, Arden, and then we can get on with the exciting stuff today. Is it possible that we could do like a 15-minute version for the live pitch and then have like a longer version that is actually what gets posted to the website?
Yep, there is. So if you have a much more detailed presentation that you'd want to make it available on demand, all we would need is a pre-recorded session.
Okay, fair
pre-recorded
enough.
recording, as well as the slides that go with the pre-recorded session. So by September 24th, we're expecting a first draft of the slides for those abstracts that have been accepted. And right now they're conditionally accepted because I know all of the folks want to get eyes on the presentation deck. But I think it's October 15th, and the schedule is also available where it says speakers. If you go back to the main, what do you call it, Global Summit thing, there's a speaker tab as well. And the schedule is posted there, but I think it's October 9th or 10th that it's required in terms of the the final slides are due. So here, let me see if I can find the link, and I'll post the link for the speakers here, because not all of this is available. So here, let me see. Of course, no. Okay, I'll post it in the link, and then you guys can decide. But yeah, October 15th is the final presentation, and so if you are doing a pre-recorded session, we would want your final presentation deck and your recordings by October 15th. And then we'll post it on demand. And so it'll be available for anyone that's attending virtually. It'll be available, on the portal. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Back to you.
Yeah, Archana, I wanted to add one other comment to your, suggestion of virtual workshops, which is a great idea. Other projects in OCP leverage that. Test and validation is a very unique work stream. So one other area we should explore is, are there any other organizations outside of Open Compute, maybe in Linux Foundation, and others in open source software ecosystem, where test and validation could be an existing effort, and they might organize their own summits. I know, for example, OSS organizes summits. I've attended one in Portland in the past, and those could be another forum where OCP can present itself, have a booth, perhaps, and Archana, this is coming to you. And at the same time, test and validation team here can also submit proposals to those kind of events to create cross organizational awareness, something I would encourage everyone to look into.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of other projects are doing that. I know the cooling project goes and presents, at ASHRAE a lot. The data center facilities project has presented at DCD. They've presented at 7x24 just to promote, what they're doing here at OCP. And from that, we've had a lot of really great participation, as well as a lot of cross collaboration going on between projects, because obviously we don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? We want to leverage what others are doing and also make them aware of what we're doing so that they're not having to reinvent the wheel. So great suggestion, DJ. And something for you guys to think about too. So look outside OCP and see if there's somebody else that's also, in the same boat as you guys, but maybe approaching things from a slightly different way.
Host a annual conference on testing or something like that, if I remember correctly. Maybe Dan, I don't know if you remember.
There are. I mean, there's a million of them. A lot of them are kind of more geared towards structural testing than functional testing. But they're definitely out there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if
So yeah,
supercomputing does anything around test and validation. I know their event is a week after ours.
Yeah, Ron would know. He's tied into them very closely, so I can query him on that.
Okay.
cool.
Yeah, I remember there used to be GTAC, right? Google Test Automation Conference that I think stopped in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. On the topic of virtual streaming, and to Dan's question, Archana, I was curious, what is going to land on the YouTube channel of the summit? Is it going to be both the extended presentation, the stream itself, I mean, is it going to be both? I'm just curious to know.
So YouTube will not carry it. Our platform, just like for Tech Week, was FN Virtual, and so the FN Virtual platform will carry both the live stream pre-recorded session as well as the presentation deck. So there is, registration that is involved in the virtual all access, whereas YouTube right now, all of our project calls and everything are free. This will not be, at least not for a few months. After a few months, we do make it available free to everybody. But for the time being, there will be a virtual all access fee if you want access to the engineering workshop content virtually.
Okay, and once the 2 months are passed, then this content is made available publicly. Is it going to be both the streaming of the event as well as the extended content?
Yep. You will be able to get everything available, just like today. The Tech Week content is available. Same thing with this. This will be available, both the on-demand content as well as the live and the presentation decks.
And the Experience Center, however, has no streaming component, or it
Correct.
will, but it will not have any permanence, right? It will just
Correct.
be, okay.
Correct. Yep. The Experience Center, if there is a virtual demo available for it, then we will absolutely make it available virtually. If there isn't, then obviously it won't be. Because the whole purpose of the Experience Center is to experience it, right? So there might be, I think that last year or 2 years ago when we had the in-person event, we just had like a video done, a little snippet, of what the Experience Center was, but I don't think it's going to go into the detail that you're looking for.
And while we're on the topic of logistics on this, how are things starting to shape up with the current Delta variant and everything? What are sort of the numbers you're seeing? What are the trends? Anything you could share?
Yeah, so as of right now, what we have heard from the Santa Clara County as well as the San Jose Convention Center, which falls under the Santa Clara County here in the California area, is that vaccinations will be required in order to enter the San Jose Convention Center. I believe that is a mandate from the county that any meetings of 50 or more that are being held indoors, all attendees need to be vaccinated. We will be providing masks and sanitation stations for, throughout the conference. And we've actually expanded our expo hall, and that's why we have fewer tracks this year. They are fewer tracks, but they're in larger rooms to allow for social distancing. So at the present moment, we are continuing with the hybrid model, which is, having the virtual all access and virtual element available to those that cannot travel and are international, because I think that's where the biggest issue is. But if you are local and can go by car, or if you want to, I know some folks are definitely coming by plane, and they've booked reservations and hotels and whatnot. So at the present moment, we are expecting maybe not as large of an attendance that we did in past summits, but certainly a lot of people here are in the Bay Area and don't have to get on a plane to travel. Now, I know certain companies have restrictions in place, and right now our board member companies are one of those companies, right? I mean, Facebook, Microsoft, Intel, Google, they all have restrictions in place, but from what I understand, it's for travel on a plane and not local travel. And people are able to get exceptions for events. And so as far as we know, everything is still status quo, and they're letting people get the exception to travel. Now, that may change between now and November, and we will keep you posted, and we're keeping our board posted, and the website is about as updated as it can be, given what we've been hearing from the county as well as the convention center. So I know in the state of California, there is a way to get digital vaccination records, and it's through a QR code. I've used it personally to go to the Giants game and to go to some local events, and it's fairly easy to get that code. It's free of charge. I know outside of the California area that might not be the case, so we are talking to ClearPass that you see at airports, and seeing if that might be an option to set up a vaccination, digital record through them or through the convention center itself. But those are the kind of things that we're looking at. I hope that answers your question, at least for right now.
Yeah, thanks for the updates.
Yep, absolutely. Just keep checking back on the website, the main website page. We do have a tab up there for, safety, health and safety, and we're keeping it as updated as we hear the information. We are asking our board members for sure to make that decision earlier than later, so that we can prepare also accordingly, because it'd be so much easier for our speakers to know in advance and be able to have enough time to do the pre-recorded sessions and send it to us. And for those that have already made travel plans to, get their money back. But we'll see what the board decides. We'll keep you posted.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. On to the fun stuff then. Yunlin and do you want to present? I think Marcos, is it?
Yeah, I can present. Kevin is out of office today, so I will cover him.
Okay, giving you the ball.
Can you see my screen now?
Looks
Yeah.
good.
Okay. So, sorry, this is my terminal. I'll start from the OCP machine, the Delta Lake machine. So I put a error monitor, which is the like one of the tests we built in Google, and then so this is one of the monitors we have. One of the primary features we support is the dash help, which will print all the like the flags that we can use for override the parameters and the default parameters as the JSON object. So here you can see we have the pooling intervals, we have the runtime sex, we have all the different thresholds, including the PCIe thresholds, which I will demo later, based on the PCI crawler. And you can we have another parameter called dry run. For example, like this one. We give the parameter JSON at standard in, and then we override with the flags above, and then we run dry run. Let me give you a look of the overrides before that. So we override the pooling interval to be 1, runtime set to be 10, and we only use the PCIe error monitor. And then we give give some PCIe thresholds. Like for here, I put the name to be empty because I want to show the override via the command line flags. We override the name to be one of the PCIe port. So after we use this one, and we use dry run to print the current parameters, it will show that like all the parameters have been overridden. Same for the PCI threshold. The command line override will again override the customized JSON parameter passed in from standard in. Okay, so we will use this combo to monitor the PCIe AERs. Just remove the remove the dry run, and then save the results in results text. So you can see we can start from here. So at the start, I'm sure you are familiar with the results model. There's a test run result, and in it there's a component where we monitor the 00667 and another one called for 04. And then we have a test run step created to monitor one of the PCIe. And then there's a measurement start. Then we monitor the correctable errors, the non-fatal errors, the fatal errors, and each error type has its own measurement series, and also like every 1 sec it will pull a different measurement element. So all the PCI zero, all the AER's count is 0 for now, which is expected. Okay, we go to the end. You can see it's already failing because if you still remember, we set the PCI threshold to be -1. That's why it's failing. You can see here we set the correctable threshold to be -1. So if we take a look at the results and search for diagnosis, you can see one of the PCIe cable is report is healthy because it doesn't have any AER errors, and the other one, which is the one we set the threshold, is failing because we said because the correct number, the correct error counts exceed this threshold we set. And also, if you search for range, that's where we report the threshold. You can see all the range of I think there's a this is the there should be a measurement. This is measurement element. Oh, this is the here. This is the test step ID, which I think for this step ID we monitor the one that we set the threshold, and we have a maximum of -1. So this is how we usually apply the threshold to through the parameters to the melt index. This is any questions so far?
So real fast, maybe just add some things here because Lin went really fast through a lot of things here, right? So what we saw was sort of passing the parameters by a command line, passing the parameters by a JSON file, doing some overrides, and then the one part that's sort of novel here that we might have missed is Lin, if you could kind of talk about like on your example there, how you have the indexed parameter on the PCIe threshold there and exactly what that's doing. I think that might be interesting to people.
What do you mean by indexed? Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's the part that's sort of weird the first time you see it. It doesn't look like a normal parameter, right?
Yeah. Let me show the overrides first. You can see so the PCIe I can show the the parameter definition we put together. So if I open this one, and this is the parameter proto. You can see so in this is the entry of our parameters, and we define all the parameters by a proto. In here, the PCI threshold is a repeated field of nested object called PCIe threshold, and in it it has a name, it has correctable, non-fatal, fatal, etc. And for here, we cite the nested proto by JSON, and we can also override the nested fields by command line overrides. For example, for here we have one PCI threshold, so we can specify the PCI threshold 0, which is the first object, and we override the name to be a string, which will apply here. So this is how we if we have a nested proto, of course we can send it by standard input, but for either debugging purposes or some overrides purposes, we want to override just a specific field in that proto or in that JSON nested object, then we have a way to easily do that. We can also like override this. You can see there's a correctable here. Correctable equals -2. Then when we run dry run this time, the correctable will be overridden to -2. So the sequence would be there will be some default parameter if you run error monitor -- help. This is the default parameter that we build together when we build when we when we build the test. And then the customized parameter from standard in will override the default parameter. And on top of that, the command line parameter will override the customized JSON standard input.
Just a quick question on this indexing of parameters. If you
Yeah.
defined, so is the name used as a key, or is there no relationship between the name and the index?
If it's a list, then this is the like the list index will be the key. If it's a map, yes, the name will be the key.
Because I mean, this is a common problem with PCI detectors, right? You use the BDF, the slot number, and the BDF value to put a threshold of some kind. So I'm trying to understand in this case, what if you had in your parameters PCIe threshold sub 0 and then sub 1, both mapping to 6700 and with different correctable values? How would error monitor disambiguate between the two if it was a user error, for example?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Can you please repeat that?
Yeah. Let's say that I'm a user and I make a mistake in defining PCIe threshold sub 0.name 6700, and then I define another one that's PCIe thresholds sub 1.name 6700, but with a different correctable value.
Yeah.
How would that be disambiguated?
So the PCIe threshold is a list. You can define as many like name to threshold combo as you want.
Yeah, I think Vincent's question was, what if the user had made an error and made two limits that were conflicting that didn't make sense? And I think the answer here is that the Melton framework itself doesn't catch that. Like what would happen would really be dependent on the diag implementation in this case, right? What it would do there.
Okay, so it's trying to enforce each item in that list and just basically treat them as measurements, and the diagnosis will just look and say, okay, I had these two thresholds set, I'm just going to enforce, and it will fail for whichever one is legitimately failing. Is that right?
I would say that's the part that's going to be diag implementation dependent. Like, if you added logic in your diag to catch that, like what the framework gets you for free is sort of the parameter listing that you saw, the help, it gets you type safety, it gets you override. Like it'll make sure that that int really is an int, but it won't do anything beyond that. Anything else that you'd want to do, I think, would be left up as an exercise to the diag developer. All it really does is get your values into you, and then it's up to you what you do to them.
Okay, and one last question on the definition of the threshold. Does this input spec have capability to define the operator on whether the correctable value should be greater than, equal, not equal, less than a particular value, or is that sort of an assumption of how does that mapping get done? That the range. Here you said correctable -1. Does it mean like no more than -1, exactly -1, less than -1? Where is that defined?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, so the PCI crawler is just what we put together in a week. So yeah, another demo I will show the sensor monitor which has all the canonical comparison we have in Melton framework, and we I
Okay.
said canonical because it can be applied. Hopefully, it can be applicable to all the other like comparison.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's great.
Can
And
I ask you
then
a quick question? Sorry, for interrupting. What is the relation between a test step ID and a sequence number? I think I'm a little bit kind of mixed up on those. I thought the test step ID would be the one that kind of keeps incrementing, but it seems like the sequence number is doing that.
Yeah, so the sequence number will go from 0 to like in an increasing order for every result artifact signed. And so it's unique across the test run. And the test step is actually the logical steps in a test, in a test run. So for example, for this test, we have two test steps. One is to monitor the 67 PCI cable, and the other is to monitor the the 04 PCI cable. And the test step ID is unique. It's also unique across the test run, but is applicable for each test step. And the sequence number is like unique for each artifact signed here.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
yeah, maybe to add to that point too, like one thing that at first is a little counterintuitive. Like when you look at the JSON outputs for this, this is the data in flight, right? Which is there for streaming to support the fact that these might be coming in out of order and everything else, right? But like when you look at the data at rest, it's a lot easier to interpret, right?
Yeah, maybe I can show something. Measurement series start. Huh. Series. Yeah. Yeah, so here you can see clearly that for each measurement series start, we give it a unique series ID. So this ID is just for the series. And the sequence where the sequence number like is it's for the like each JSON line or each artifact.
Yeah, maybe to
Oh, yeah,
add
okay.
to this too, one of the things that we intend to add is when we put all this up into the repo, we'll have sort of the Melton framework, we'll have a hello world, and then we'll also have some utilities that are helpful for going through the output. And one of them will take sort of the streaming results and turn it into like the JSON at rest or like a nice HTML view where you can go through and really look at these easily to see what happened after a diagram, prior to like when you're doing that integration with your test executive.
Cool. I have just, if we have a little time for that, just a couple questions. One very detailed on the logistics to get to the params file. So if I understand correctly, the dry run here was just for the demo to generate this, to demonstrate the override, but it's not required, right? You wouldn't need to do a dry run in order to update the file, right?
Yeah,
You can just run it without dry run and would just take those changes in, correct?
the dry run is only for debugging. We should never use that. It will
Okay.
it will block the test from running.
Okay. Yeah, you were just using it just to show us the file, right? Was that the idea?
Also, it can be a sanity check for the parameters. For example, if we give the correct number some random string, then it will report an error. So because it's all
Okay.
text based, it's not. So this one doesn't report an error.
But I see what you mean. It's kind of like a
Yeah.
way to validate your inputs, or give you a chance to do it before you do the run.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't sort of a requirement of defining the params file. It was just. And the other question I have is around how much of error monitor needs to be, when does error monitor or the application need to be rebuilt with Bazel or the build system? That's something that's kind of opaque to me at this point. What's sort of required, and how much are we planning on exposing, when we're going to use this spec in terms of build system, so to speak? It's a bit of a vague question, and what I mean by that is, if I want to make changes, am I going to be limited to basically defining these parameters, or are there times when I'm going to need to rebuild the application, and what gets exposed to me to rebuild it?
So the test binary is of course like defined as build time, and the default parameters, which is like without any overrides, the default parameter is built when the test is first built, and all the you can see all the standard in and overrides are runtime parameters.
Yeah, I think, Vincent, to answer your question, with our current implementation, any change you make requires a rebuild, right? And primarily we're there because, we have the multi-language support, right? Where we're targeting multiple development languages. If you had like a pure Python implementation, like obviously that wouldn't be required, right? It would all be interpreted. You can kind of run and go, right? But with our current implementation, you would have to compile it just like any other, program written in C++.
Okay.
Yeah, and that actually segues in. Well, actually, let's get all the questions out, and then I have one more thing I wanted to bring up as a question to the team.
Yeah, I don't want to dominate the questions. I'll let others jump in.
Just if I have a limit that I expect to be applied across a number of devices, how do I make sure that I get the right number of outputs for the number of devices that are supposed to be there?
If you are talking about the result sanity check, we would expect the Melton deck, if we need, we can provide some result checklist for the test executive to make sure the corresponding artifact is sent out.
Yeah, I think per, the question, Marco, is sort of the same answer again. Like if you wanted to test 5 devices and you wanted to make sure you had results for 5 devices, right? Like those 5 devices would need to be an input parameter, right? And then your diag would need to verify that you touched all 5.
And on top of that, maybe we need to jump to the sensor monitor faster. Yeah, so as I said, the sensor monitor has the canonical comparison compiler that we put together. We have some so this is the target sensors that we have, and there is not the sample size, minimum sensor count that we require. So if we have this field and set it in parameters, then the test itself can check if we have collected those minimum sensor count we require. But it's all depending on the test. If the test didn't have the logic to check this, then we don't have that, right?
So I'll jump in on a question. So looking back at the spec, that we have in the RFC that you guys shared, is there something that I can leverage from a Melton agent if I were to write something that basically outputs as per the spec, that would be a generic sort of portable agent, right? That just sits there and I'm just feeding it the results information. At that point, what can I leverage out of it? And because I see a lot of those input parameters here, like envelope enabled, hardware interface, default backend, and these things are not in the spec, right? They're kind of things that were added that were specific to the PCI monitor. So I'm just curious, yeah, if I have this abstract, I walk into our booth at OCP Summit and I ask this question, right? So we have this test spec IO, and I'm writing something that emits streams JSON, line delimited JSON what would I get out of it?
To answer a question about the envelope UID, so this is Google specific parameters. This is not Melton specific. So when we build it fully open source, then we don't have those parameters.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a noise. Yeah, and also I didn't get the second part of the question, but if you are talking about what like handy libraries we can provide, that's a question.
Yeah, my question is really very naive, very high level question. It's, you know, when I look at the spec that we have for what results look like in terms of the structure from the test run, test step, you know, measurement. If I had, if I wrote a diag that emits line delimited JSON according to this format, is there anything I can leverage out of an agent that effectively is a Melton agent that would summarize this information in any way, or bring any kind of add-on? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah,
So one
that's the,
thing,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Vinland. No, I was just going to say that's what we were going to include is like two of the helper utilities, something to take sort of the data in flight and then turn it into like a nice, pretty JSON view of the final results where, you know, you don't get test step start, test step in, test step artifact, you know, you get the step and then all the things associated with it. And then we're also going to provide something that shows just like a nice HTML tabular view of the data, right? But as far as like analysis tools or anything like that, like we weren't thinking about providing that. I mean, they're not hard to do, but like they won't be there in Gen 1. I think if we sort of have the framework, some examples, really good documentation, and then those sort of like creature feature helper utilities, that seems like MVP. But I would definitely like to get your opinion as well and what you think might help, right? You know, our goal is to everybody has that like 10 minutes, I downloaded it, I built it, and I can use it experience, right? And then, you know, learning it may require more time, but we want to make sure that they can get started within 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, and I can think of validation. A validator, you know, a basic validator would be an important part of this. Is it, you know, is it compliant? Just like where we're going with the JSON RPC that Tobias was working on, and Giovanni picked up. That's, and I see him unmuted, so I'll let others jump in.
No, I was going to say something different. I mean, I guess part of these higher level, like now we have all these results, what do we do with it, is also in the orchestrator at the end of the day, right? Yeah. But yeah, I agree. It would be cool to have like a standalone binary where that you can just pipe this in and it tells you some things, at least for development, like, is this compliant? Is this okay? Like, does this in the end say the result is pass, and a bunch of basic things.
Yeah, I think the one, you know, concern, well, not really concern, but like you can see with our output parser, with sort of the library to build the output, like if you wanted to do your own implementation, you could do that fairly quickly, right? Like it maybe is, I don't know, a week worth of work. It might be less than that, right? Once you have the spec. The input parsing, though, isn't that way, right? Like, this is actually fairly complicated and involved, right? Like, if you wanted to build your own implementation, you're probably going to have bugs and mess it up and everything else, and it's a considerable lift, right? What we have right now, I mean, it does everything. It's all singing, all dancing, you know, it's sort of all powerful, right? But that being said, it's also very complicated if you wanted to implement it, right? You know, it's sort of to meet every use case, but I was a little worried that, you know, it might push us down a path where the reference implementation is like the only real implementation, and that was the only concern that I had.
But to add on that, like we can, so our parameter model and the data result data model is totally separate. So if we just want to set the flags in the test, there's nothing preventing us from just setting the flags as parameters.
Yeah, and I mean that's certainly true, right? You could have three or four things, but if we spec it as it currently exists, right? Like you would have to be fully spec compliant, right? I do agree. Like the diags you're showing, like you know, sensor monitor is a great example because it's a fairly complicated, you know, parameter structure. There's a lot of stuff to do. Where if you looked at a lot of diags, they may be like, it takes 3 ints or something like that, right? But this is a good example of, I think, like a really good real world case where it can get a little messy, right?
Yeah, so we have only 5 minutes. Maybe I can answer the question about the operators and the comparison tabs. So let me give an like a view of what's the parameter, what's the comparison look like. So this is our target sensor. It's a repeated field in the sensor monitor parameter definition. And in the target sensor, we have a filter called sensor regex, and all the different filters are combined by all. And inside the filter, we have another operator, which is the operator on the different on the different ID regexes. For example, the ID include, so that path is only available for us. All data ID is something that OpenBMC export by BMC web. Name is, of course, we always match the sensor names. And arena type is also some other fields we can match, and all those identifier regexes can be combined together by this operator. So it's a list of fields. So this is the like in the field, this will be the canonical way we want to do the comparison.
That's awesome. That looks great.
It's worth saying though, it's still optional, right? You don't have to do any comparisons in the diag if you don't want to, right? You can obviously still send all that, raw data up to your test executive and let it make decisions too.
Another question I want to mention is I can demo the sensor monitor or not. It's based on Redfish, and it will talk to the OpenBMC and collect the sensor readings from Redfish by Redfish. But I checked the OCP machine. The BMC there doesn't have the BMC web, and I didn't see a clear way to like export any sensor reading. I did see a sensor D, but I didn't see any clear way to export the sensor reading from by Redfish in Redfish format. So I was wondering if like we want to like demo the sensor monitor, and if we want to like install a BMC web on those on that OpenBMC.
Yeah, real quick question. When you saw that BMC web wasn't there, were you expecting it to be running on a certain port? Because I know we run it on an unusual port.
Oh, we can specify the port. That's not a problem. This is how we specify the port.
Yeah, no, I was wondering though, when you saw that BMC web wasn't running on that machine, like what port were you looking at?
Oh, I checked top and I didn't see a BMC web.
Okay, got it. But you did that on the BMC, or you did that on the Linux machine?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did that on the BMC. Yeah, because sensor monitor will give us a better way to demo the thresholds and to do plotting if needed, because the errors is always 0. So it can be a better demo, especially it's talking to OpenBMC through Redfish, which is a filter. So the ask from us is to help us like reimage the BMC and give it the BMC web.
My thought on this is definitely would make the demo stronger, and it would be very neat to prepare for that. There are some subtleties, obviously, with the BMC on these multi-node systems that might make parametrizing what we're looking for, whether it's slot specific for this node or whether it's going to be system wide. What are we looking for, right? In some of those architectures, some of the fans assemblies, for example, are decoupled from the slots, and we may need to monitor fans separately. So as long as we can weave that in the demo without confusing people too much, I think that would be a really great add-on to say, we're not only monitoring the PCI lanes themselves, but we're also monitoring the BMC sensors. it's just as long as it's simple to understand, that would make a great case.
Okay. So the hardware interface target address, this one, if you pass in the BMC IP, then it will talk to the BMC.
Right. My only question around, and maybe we can do that demo next time or dig into it, is what would it be looking for, right? Would it be looking for specific sensors that are associated to this DUT, this slot specifically, or is it looking at all the sensors across all the slots, since these are multi-node systems?
Yeah, that's we are out of time. We can definitely follow that up. I think we have a way to do that.
Yeah, that'd be really cool to look into that next time.
Yeah, we actually too, Vincent, since you brought up the whole multi-node aspect, this is one of the things that we're working on internally as more and more of our machines become sort of multi-node, which means something different to us than the way you're using it, but it's the same problems and challenges, right? Like that's something too that I think is sort of the next step of this discussion that we need to say, okay, now that we know that like it's not like one box is one Linux domain anymore, right? Like how do we handle that when these sensors and hardware cross those Linux domains, right?
Exactly. I mean, everything's a through. Everything that's a through has to be identifiable, right? And yeah. So,
You got
but
it. And that's maybe a good way to segue into that whole hardware abstraction layer discussion next, right?
yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Juan Lin. This is a great
Great,
demo.
great demo, Yunlin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Paul, do you have just a
And
minute to stick around?
yeah, I do. Cool. If there's nothing else this week, anyone else want to bring up anything? Otherwise, Dan, I'm actually looking for some time to, while this demo is going on, I was actually pinging Brennan on the sides, trying to figure out how we're going to get OpenTap integrated. Do you guys have some time this week to chat with Keysight about OpenTap implementation of this?
Yeah, we'll make time for sure. Keysight's got time. Just let us know when's convenient for you guys.
Brennan, I'm going to set this up on Friday, which Vincent, we get the day off from Facebook. I don't know if you want to attend as well.
I have plans Friday to not work, so.
Good plan.
Most of us do, but I'll get this kickstarted with Keysight first, and let's see where we head.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we need to get them the bits down there, right? So they can start kicking the tires and working on the parser.
Oof.
Yeah. And yeah, so Paul, Friday morning looks open for both Alex and I. I mean, we could do the same time as this meeting if you guys want, or we could do a little bit later.
Since we're all on the West Coast, I would think a bit later, but then would 10 a.m. work for you and Yanlin?
10 a.m. Pacific?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I think it will. I mean, I need to check my calendar and everything else this Friday.
I'll send out a tentative invite, and then we can figure it out from there.
Okay.
Yeah, I did look. Friday I am booked solid. I'm sorry, this is perf week actually for us at Google right now, so it's kind of insane. But next week will be a lot more freer, and then it will be worse again.
I guess we can ask Yanlin if she has availability on Friday.
I'm available on Friday, 10 a.m.
Perfect. I'll set that up then. All right. I will end the recording then. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.